By the early 1170s, Henry's empire stretched across England, Normandy, Anjou, Aquitaine, and beyond. But ruling such a vast territory required a delicate balance of power, and Henry's own family disputes would prove to be his undoing. At the heart of the conflict was Henry's plan for succession. In 1170, he had crowned his eldest son, Henry the Young King, as his co-ruler, a rare move meant to secure the Angevin dynasty. However, the young king was given no real power or land, which left him frustrated and humiliated. Meanwhile, Henry's other sons, Richard the Lionheart, Geoffrey, and John, also expected inheritances. But Henry refused to divide his empire until after his death. This created deep resentment among his children. Adding to the tension was Eleanor of Aquitaine, Henry's wife and one of the most powerful women of the medieval world. She had always been fiercely independent and felt that Henry favored his illegitimate children and sidelined their sons. Her support for Richard, her favorite son, played a crucial role in what was to come. Meanwhile, Louis VII of France, still Henry's longtime rival, saw an opportunity to weaken the Angevin Empire. He welcomed Henry's rebellious sons to his court, offering them support and a base from which to launch a rebellion. With Eleanor's backing and Louis's aid, the seeds of revolt were sown. By March 1173, tensions between Henry and his sons erupted into open rebellion. The revolt was further fueled by the imprisonment of Eleanor of Aquitaine, who had sided with Richard. In response, Henry ordered her captured and held in confinement, deepening the rift within the royal family. With Louis's support, the young King Richard and Geoffrey secured powerful allies across France and England. Several discontented nobles, including Hugh Bigod, Earl of Norfolk, and Robert de Beaumont, Earl of Leicester, joined the cause. In Scotland, William the Lion seized the opportunity to invade northern England, aiming to weaken Henry's hold over his realm. The rebellion quickly became a multi-front war, threatening the entire Angevin Empire, and Henry faced revolts in England itself. For the first time, his rule was truly at risk. Henry's first priority was securing Normandy, the heart of his continental power. By mid-1173, forces loyal to the young king and Richard were besieging key castles, with Louis VII supporting them from the east. However, Henry swiftly launched counterattacks that dispersed rebel forces and secured key strongholds. By late 1173, the rebellion in Normandy was faltering. In Aquitaine and Brittany, Henry's allies, including Ranulph de Glanville and Richard de Lucy, managed to hold firm against Geoffrey and Richard's forces. Though the conflict remained unresolved, Henry successfully prevented his sons from gaining a decisive foothold in their claimed territories. Meanwhile, in England, Henry faced one of the most dangerous threats of his reign, as unrest spread rapidly across the realm. Powerful nobles like Robert de Beaumont, Earl of Leicester, and Hugh Bigod, Earl of Norfolk, joined the rebellion, challenging the king's authority and raising forces against him. To make matters worse, William the Lion of Scotland invaded from the north, attempting to capture Northumberland. Despite the overwhelming odds, Henry's commanders Richard de Lucy and Humphrey de Bohun led the royalist forces with great skill. In October 1173, Henry's forces crushed the rebels at the Battle of Fornham, defeating the Earl of Leicester's army and taking him prisoner. Meanwhile, Henry strengthened his defensive line in the north, holding back the Scots and preventing further incursions. By early 1174, the rebellion was beginning to collapse. Henry returned to England, determined to finish the war once and for all. The final blow to the rebellion came in July 1174, when William the Lion was captured at the Battle of Alnwick. His defeat shattered the remaining rebel support in England. With his enemies losing ground, Henry quickly moved to reassert his dominance. One by one, rebel castles fell and noble lords submitted to the king's authority. In September 1174, Henry forced his sons and their allies to negotiate peace. The Treaty of Montlouis ended the rebellion, with Henry forgiving his sons. He also kept Eleanor of Aquitaine imprisoned, preventing her from further inciting rebellion. The Great Revolt of 1173 to 1174 had been one of the greatest threats to Henry's reign, but he had emerged victorious. However, while he had won the war, his family remained deeply divided, and his relationship with his sons would only grow worse in the years to come. In 1180, Philip Augustus became King of France following the death of Louis VII. Though still a teenager, Philip quickly proved to be a shrewd and capable monarch. He inherited his father's hostility toward the Angevin Empire and was determined to reduce English influence in France. Henry, wary of Philip's ambitions, attempted to maintain peace through diplomacy, but Philip skillfully exploited the divisions within the Plantagenet family. Philip began to court Henry's sons, particularly Richard, offering support and influence in exchange for their loyalty. This tactic proved effective, especially as Richard grew increasingly frustrated with his father's refusal to name him heir to the empire. By the 1180s, the old cycle of conflict resumed. Henry the young king died unexpectedly in 1183, but rather than easing tensions, his death intensified the power struggle between Richard and Geoffrey. Geoffrey died in a tournament in 1186, leaving Richard as the eldest surviving son and Henry's obvious successor. However, Henry favored his youngest son, John, whom he hoped to elevate without diminishing Richard's authority. Richard, distrustful of his father and jealous of John's growing prominence, openly aligned with Philip Augustus, forming a dangerous alliance against Henry. By 1189, Philip and Richard launched a joint campaign against Henry and France. Exhausted, isolated, and suffering from illness, Henry was forced to negotiate. The Treaty of Colombières compelled him to acknowledge Richard as his heir. Shortly after, Henry discovered that even John had betrayed him, siding with Richard and Philip during the conflict. Broken physically and emotionally, Henry died on July 6, 1189 at Chinon Castle in Anjou. He was buried at Fontevraud Abbey beside his beloved wife Eleanor. His death marked the end of a long and turbulent reign that had seen the creation of one of the largest empires in medieval Europe. Despite his violent end, Henry's legacy is immense. He restored royal authority in England, implemented legal and administrative reforms, and laid the foundation for English common law. Richard inherited the throne after Henry's death in 1189, becoming King of England at the age of 31. Known to history as Richard the Lionheart, he was already a celebrated military commander with a fierce reputation earned on the battlefields of Aquitaine. Unlike his father, Richard had little interest in ruling England directly. His sights were set on the Holy Land. Within a year of taking the crown, he embarked on the Third Crusade, leaving the governance of his vast empire in uncertain hands. But Richard's reign, though brief, was filled with drama, warfare, and legacy defining moments, both at home and abroad. In the next episode, we'll dive into the story of Richard the Lionheart, his epic crusade, his rivalry with Saladin, and the trials he faced far from home.